I think the most important thing is to show up. Yeah, we often say, if I take this course 5 years, it's a 5-year course and I don't have 5 years. But whether you do the course or not, 5 years will pass. So therefore, you do the course for 2 years, you don't like it, move on, get on with life. But I believe that if you show up, give it your energy, see how it goes. And be ready to say that, okay, I don't like this. It's okay. It cannot get to a point where, what will people say that I did this course and am I a failure? No, you're not a failure simply because you showed up and made the effort.
Welcome to Inspire Someone Today podcast, a show where we dive into the stories and insights that has the power to create ripples of inspiration in your life. I'm your host Shrikant and I'm thrilled to be with you on this journey of inspiration. To all the listeners coming back to Inspire Someone Today, welcome back. And if you're a new listener, thank you for joining us. Welcome to this episode of Inspire Someone Today. On the platform this month, we are celebrating Women's Day all through the month. And I'm privileged to get 4 different women inspirers, women achievers joining us on the show. Joining me today, I fall short of doing this introduction because she is a multifaceted personality. Just give it a listen to this. Communication specialist, ex-former rally driver, mental health counselor, independent director, a drone pilot and instructor. I don't know what else am I missing, but it's an absolute joy to welcome Archana Muthappa on this episode of Inspire Someone Today. Archana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shrikant. My pleasure to be here with you.
Archana, we'll jump right in. The multiple roles that I kind of used to introduce you. Just give us a backdrop. How does this whole career journey of Archana get started? You have traversed these multiple roles. How did you go about A, identifying it, and B, preparing for it?
Well, Shrikant, I think much like any other person, young person going through life, life just happens to you, right? You go to school, you go to college. At some point during the course of my study, I figured that I wanted to study psychology because the human mind was very interesting. The human behavior, why we do what we do and how we do it was very interesting for me, even though I was a young person at that point. However, having done my master's in psychology, I found that at the time that I graduated, there was not really much use for it. You could become an academician or a researcher. Counseling and, organizational behavior, the way we know it today, didn't really exist. It wasn't something that was accepted. So I started my career as a counselor, but soon found, that it wasn't something that would bring me long-term. I didn't have the ability at that point. I think at 23, you have a limited worldview. And therefore, to bring experience to bear and to work with people at that point is a more difficult task. At that point, I switched to communications and that really became my career. I'm almost 30 years now into communication. It's been a fantastic journey. However, on the way, I figured that mental health has picked up steam. There's things that one can do. So I restarted my journey in mental health. I requalified and today I also practice mental health counseling. That's something I do. I'm very interested in it. So between mental health and communications, those are really the things that I do, but communications still at the core of what I do. The other things I think really come from an innate sense of curiosity about the world. If there was one thing that I really enjoyed, it was just a sense of, for example, you talked about the rally driver thing. Now the love for cars comes from my dad. My dad is a car fanatic. He would take us on long road trips, on journeys. And that really, inspired us. In fact, my brother's used to be a national rally championship. He was the winner of the national rally championship. So, I followed in his footsteps. I did a few rallies, thoroughly enjoyed it. So if there's one thing that I love, it's fast cars, that kind of thing. So therefore, it just seemed natural to do some rally driving. The drone thing literally fell in my lap. Someone I know was, a drone instructor. I said, okay, let me see what this is about. So I think really the innate sense of curiosity about the world around me, it's probably why I love to travel as well, right? That's where it comes from. And to understand what's going on in the rest of the world.
That's wonderful. And growing up, Archana, how was life like for Archana? Did you have any of these things in your mind saying that, okay, this is what I would want to be?
No, the truth is there was no grand plan. It literally all fell into place. I wasn't one of those very, aware people. And the one thing I was aware of, though, that I wasn't going to do engineering or medicine because science and maths is really not my area of ability or expertise. I was definitely a commerce or arts student because also, to realize that those days, these were the 3 or 4 things that we did, right? We did engineering or medicine, we did law, or we did arts or commerce, right? Today, it's fantastic the amount of opportunity there is. You can be anything you want given the circumstance. So it happened quite by chance, but I love the way it happened.
So you just embrace serendipity to happen and here you are.
Yeah, I think it's been a wonderful journey. I've enjoyed it.
And you did mention about the point of having that innate curiosity for you to have taken multiple roles. What have you enjoyed most traversing these multiple roles? Again, it's wide spectrum, right? From a rally driver to a drone instructor, and right in the middle is communication and mental health professional.
Right.
So what did you enjoy? What has been the lessons that you have learned along this journey that you have applied?
I think the most important thing is to show up. Yeah, we often say, if I take this course 5 years, it's a 5-year course and I don't have 5 years. But whether you do the course or not, 5 years will pass. So therefore, you do the course for 2 years, you don't like it, move on, get on with life. But I believe that if you show up, give it your energy, see how it goes, and be ready to say that, okay, I don't like this. It's okay. It cannot get to a point where, what will people say that I did this course and am I a failure? No, you're not a failure simply because you showed up and made the effort. I often have this parallel where, people at the gym or people working out, right? A lot of us don't have those model-shaped bodies. Yet we show up at the gym and that really is what it is. It's about showing up and being present. And I think that is an attitude that has gone a long way. And in my life as well.
Oh, wonderful. I think just showing up is half the battle won.
Yeah, absolutely.
And any learnings from either of these career trajectories that you have made, that you have taken this as a lesson or this has kind of come good in some other career trajectory of yours? So as an example, what are some of those learnings of being a rally car driver that has come for good stead in some other roles at a later point of time?
I can draw a parallel with the rally driving to crisis management. When you're driving a special stage in a rally, your decisions are all split-second decisions. They're instant decisions, and they have to be made there, right? They also have to be considered, right? As much as that sounds strange, it has to be a decision that's both a head and heart that comes into play. A head is, do I take the turn at a certain angle and a certain speed? And heart is, what will happen to me as a result of taking this turn at a certain speed? And so really the way I apply it is crisis communication is very similar to that. Right? You have to react fast, but you have to react in a considered manner, right? That's something that I think really has worked for me. I was part of, the team that managed the Satyam crisis way back in 2008-9. As head of media relations, that role, then it fell on me to manage the situation external to Satyam in a manner that managed the reputation of the organization as far as possible, right? It wasn't something that I could just allow to say, okay, you know what, not my organization. Let's get on with it. I can say whatever I want. But the idea was to bring the team together and, we all banded together and made quite it was quite phenomenal the way we came together to manage that. And I think one of the learnings comes from there into the corporate world. It also gives a lot of deep insights into how people are, right? The nature of the human being is a wonderful study, Shrikant. It's just, we're so varied and vast. We're all like fingerprints. It's just amazing.
So very true. I think you gave a great example. I'm kind of taking a slight detour there. You spoke about the Satyam crisis and the ability or the need to manage that communication because you were at the helm. And lot many times, particularly when you're having a job of responsibility, you're not responsible for all the actions, but you are the face of something. And during those periods, how do you muster that emotional resilience? How do you muster that emotional agility to separate from what is organization, what is individual?
That's a very important thing. The organization and the individual, often, we see ourselves as the work we do because we're so caught up in the fact that we work for, with, at a certain organization or have a certain role that in itself becomes our identity. I think in a crisis situation, it's even more important to understand where the organization ends and the individual begins. The lines tend to blur because there's so much going on, right? But to understand that, again, I draw the example of Satyam, where a lot of people in the industry pointed fingers at the employees of Satyam and said, all employees of Satyam are, and I in quotes, not good people, because this happened to the organization. And the reasons this happened, we don't need to go into, but I'm saying a lot of us felt personally wounded by the fact that people were saying this about us, right? That gave rise to a lot of overlap between who we are as people and where the organization was. But to also see that, it's not my personal ethic or my personal integrity that's being called out. It's my integrity and personality by association, right? It's a hard one to do on a daily basis, which is when our morale drops, we feel low, we feel unhappy in that situation, want to get out. But that really is an understanding that we must develop, that an organization is different from us as people. We go to work typically, and this is true of me, I go to work because it's a means to an end, right? Do I enjoy my work? Do I bring my best self to work? I certainly do. However, I know that I work because I want the money, for example, that it brings me, that I can take and go and do other things. I can go travel the world. I can go, buy my car. I can live a certain way because I work the way I do. And that really is something that we must understand. It's important to see that we are an individual. We have our own ecosystem, and therefore, the organization must be separate from.
I think that decoupling is very, very important, very rightly called out there. And you are a mental health proponent. So you took interest, your love now is helping the people out there in terms of their mental health challenges, struggles. And you did mention about how you were driven into this field of work. And this has become front and center. Post-COVID, the talk about mental health is no longer taboo, right? There is mainstream conversations around mental health. There is support around mental health. There is also a bit of understanding around mental health and its challenges. So being on the other side of the spectrum, being that practitioner, what are you seeing? What are the symptoms that you're seeing? What are the conversations that you're having with people?
Shrikant, I'd like to call out something that you said. You said the conversations are front and center and the taboo is not like it used to be. While you're right, there are more conversations for sure. The taboo is much less. I think we're all very happy to talk about it at an organization level or, to put it out there on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But when it comes to individuals, when it comes to my family, it comes to my sibling, my friend, mental health is still very much taboo, right? Organizations, for example, they don't pick up the cause of mental health the way it requires to be picked up, typical, right? And this is not a one-size-fits-all. It's just a general call-out, right? Mental health is now almost in vogue to talk about. So if you're senior leadership in an organization, you'll say, mental health is so important. It's just, however, what do you do to manage mental health? You typically have a counselor, who's sitting in your office, so people won't go there in any case because you don't want to be seen walking into a counselor's, office. Also, you'll do a 2 or 3 hour session on World Mental Health Day and say, okay, we take care of the mental health of our employees. However, if that employee calls in sick and there's a deadline to be met, then you're saying, no, this doesn't work. A deadline has to be met. It's most important. So if that person is struggling with something, you may not pick it up and say, okay, you're not doing well. What is it that we can do for you as an organization? So there's a lot of lip service being paid to mental health. And much like it used to be in the case of CSR decades ago when CSR was a new thing, right? Where you do CSR for the sake of it, you'd put a pump in a village and say, okay, we do CSR. We bring water to the this entire village. Mental health is much like in that stage today. I think it requires a lot more for people in leadership roles to come together to make mental health front and center, mainstream, non-taboo. Let's go. Let's manage our mental health much like we do our physical. Yeah. So I think that conversation really needs a lot more to kind of, go into. But of course, I deviated from the question that you asked. So coming back to it, what I'm seeing is I have a lot of clients in the age group 20 to say mid-late 20s, right? A lot of them find relationships very, very hard. A lot of them are from the generation that grew up using devices. When they cried, they were distracted by giving them a movie to watch on an iPad or a tablet. Therefore, they've not picked up the nuances of an expression, of a tone of voice, which people like me who didn't have devices to grow up didn't have any choice. So when someone looks at me and says something or doesn't say something, I pick up body language cues. I said that I will say that person said something, but looked like it meant completely different, and it's intuitive. Because the younger people don't seem to have that, they have their arguments on text. So I argue with you, I say whatever I want, and I block you. That gives me the power. And I'm finding that a lot of people have this kind of situation going on where real life interactions are very hard for them. And I think that is something that, we need to look up from our phones and our devices a little. We need to make eye contact. We need to understand how someone's feeling by looking at them. And I think that will go a long way in making our own mental health and our own emotional wellness better.
I think you make two great points here, Archana. One is the current generation's response to things that doesn't happen is not the same as the past generations. Past generations, somebody sulking, you said you can make it out in the body language, go have conversation. The current generation, again, not their fault. That is how the
not at all.
Environment was set up. If you're crying,
not laying fault at all. You're absolutely
right.
Yeah,
exactly. So the point I'm trying to make here is, it is what it is. It is how this generation has grown up. How can the older generation come to terms with it and have a different approach of dealing with the current generation in terms of connecting with them at their level, not expecting them to be connected at the level the past generations was used to. Am I making sense here?
You're making sense for sure, Shrikant. But I also feel like, sometimes the younger generation must look up and say, okay, what's going on around me? Because at the end of the day, we're human beings, right? We want that connection. And the minute we start losing the connection, we lose that, the reason that makes us human. Therefore, I feel rather than the older generation saying, hey, what can I do for you? Which typically gets done because, there is no choice. We have to find a way to live and work together at some level of harmony. But is there a way where the younger generation can say, you know what, there's something not working here because I'm not feeling good about myself, right? I'm not feeling calm, satisfied, happy. What's going on? Some level of introspection that if I sit down with someone in person and I have a conversation, is that going to be better? Is that going to make me feel better? So maybe that, I also find that there's a lot of give in terms of, for example, this whole pronoun thing, right? I have to admit, I don't understand. I don't understand it at all. Beyond he and she, I'm not able to grasp, right? So then I get confused, right? So what does it do for me? I just back away from it and I say, no, I'm not going to do it. And if you get unhappy that I didn't address you as, a lampshade or a furry or any of that, then you know what, sweetie, you'll have to deal with your upset because I really don't understand what's good. So you see, I think it's a little bit of a give and take on both sides. But I feel that for me, at least half of my life is over. Therefore, I have certain patterns in place I can potentially manage. But I feel for a younger person, there is so much more to be found, discovered, seen in this fantastic world that we live in. Is there a way, is there a reason to say, okay, let me see what there is there. Let me get my face out of my device and see what else goes on out there. Let me have a real conversation where I use my teeth and lips and tongue and speak to someone.
Absolutely. let's make it real for a lot of our listeners out there. You spoke about two critical important terms here. One was tokenism. Two was nurturing relationships. Okay. Let's not mental health just a tokenism. Let's go beyond that. Let's build relationships beyond devices. Let's build relationships beyond stereotypes and grow it further from there. For both of these elements, if you were to give our listeners couple of things for them to practice, couple of things for them to be aware of that will bolster both the mental health practices or the awareness towards mental health and things that they can do to nurture, flourish their relationships.
The mental health thing is just look at people around you, make eye contact, see if you can see what's going on for them. When you look around you, you'll see different shades of emotion. You'll see different ways in which people react. Just see what's going on. And if you have the ability and if you can develop the ability to reach out and say, how are you doing today? And actually listen for the answer. Today we say, hi, how are you? Okay, let's get started. No, hi, how are you? Pause. Wait for a response, right? I'm not doing so well today. Oh, what happened? Right? Have that conversation for 2 minutes. If your meeting starts 2 minutes later, I don't think climate change is going to impact it. Yeah. So, to see to kind of hear and listen and be in the moment. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that could go a long way, Shrikant. It's not a big one. It's just something that will require a little bit of tweaking of the way we behave. And can I say that, I do this all the time? No, absolutely not. My phone is definitely very enchanting for me, right? There are so many things going on there. And oh my God, if I miss the Insta scrolling, then what happens, right? But it is a habit that we have to actually say, let me do this for 1 hour today. In the office, let me look around me and see how my colleagues look, feel. You're wearing a nice dress today. I don't know if that's too personal in today's context, but, growing up the way I did, we said that to people, right? We're looking good today. Of course, someone's turned around to me and said, oh, does that mean I didn't look good on the other days? And, take it for what it is, right? So those kind of things, right? So that was the first thing. The other thing you asked, how often have you met someone who said, we must meet, it's been so long, right? My typical reaction to that is, and that meeting never happened. And if I do want to meet with that person, my reaction is, okay, pull up your calendar, when shall we meet? Yeah. Make it a point to say, I want to meet with you. In fact, somebody I met recently had something very interesting for me. He said, Archana, we simply don't go out there and meet people in. Yeah. Make it a habit to look at your phone book and reach out to at least one person a week and say, I want to have a cup of coffee. Chances are that person will say yes. And on the chance that the person says no, look at someone else. But okay, one person a week may be too much for us, right? But one person a month, we don't even do that, right? So to say, let me meet with you, cup of coffee. Let me hear what you have to say. Let's have a lunch together. Let's go for a walk in the park together, right? Whatever it is that you can do, but meet somebody. Hear someone else's perspective. And when I say hear, not hear by text, but hear actually verbally and with all the visual cues of body language, all those things that we have put.
Okay, that sounds like a good enough start point for somebody to kind of nurture those relationships, be in the moment,
right,
and make in-person conversations at least once every month. And being a typical corporate guy, Archana, this is something that kind of comes up the alley for us is, how do you measure the success of your conversations with your clients, with your, I hate to call them as patients, they are not. So I would rather put it more appropriately to say, you have these conversations, a lot of people reach out saying that I need to have counseling sessions. I have this challenge to solve. What is the measure of success for you? How do you know that, okay, this conversation helped, or this is how you rate yourself as being a good mental health counselor?
So, Shrikant, right off upfront, counseling is not the solution. It's not the answer to your problem. A lot of my clients come to me and say, oh, you know what? I have this problem and I need you to solve it. That's not how it works. Counseling really is a way to articulate the way you're feeling about something about a situation, about whatever's going on around you, and to use that articulation to get an insight about what's going on. That's facilitated by someone. Right? That's really what counseling is about, where the solution comes from yourself. That said, in terms of success, if somebody came back to me and said, you know what, based on our conversation, I re-looked at the way I approached a situation. Now that is success. What is counseling about? It's about looking at small, minute ways in which you can make the change and therefore make yourself feel. At the end of the day, if you're in a good place, then the world around you is in a good place, right? We view the world around us typically based on the way we're feeling. If I wake up in the morning feeling all down and low and sad, then I view the world like that. The bird chirping is actually inherited. However, if I wake up happy, that bird chirping brings me joy, right? So to see how that is landing on you. Sometimes the chirping of birds can be, stop that racket. But sometimes that same sound is like, I'm so glad to be alive. And really, for my clients to feel on a regular basis, I'm so happy to be alive, is really the endeavor here. And the more often that can be made to happen, then I believe that the intervention is successful.
And has that got to do with also what a good mental health is also about perspectives? How broaden we develop the perspectives is good for the mental well-being?
It certainly is. And perspectives are generally good for life. In any situation, if you can take on a perspective that one is mine and one is that of the people in the world around me, right? Sometimes sometimes we find ourselves reacting to situations only from the way we're seeing it. And often people say, walk in another person's shoes. Walk in those shoes. That's when a worldview and an understanding really comes into play. See where it pinches, feel that pinch. Then you have perspective, because just your own is not a perspective really. It is your own view. That's all it is.
Point of view.
Exactly.
Great. So Archana, right up at the beginning, I did mention that this is part of we at Inspire Someone today celebrating Women's Day. We are running these episodes all through the month. And we've been talking about breaking some of the barriers in terms of mental health. So up close, from a Women's Day standpoint, what are those taboos that you had to break as you moved forward in terms of your own career journey as a career professional? What taboos did you have to break? How did you overcome that?
Shrikant, right off, I think I have to say I've been extremely lucky in the situations that presented themselves to me, the organizations with which I work, the people with whom I work. I've been extremely lucky from the thought process that I've been through several jobs in the course of my career, and I've come across varying types of people. There was one bunch of people who were true leaders. They were nurturing, they understood that their team needed XYZ things, they facilitated, they built, they grew, they created. There was another set of people who didn't do any of these. They were leaders because they happened to hold a certain designation. And of course, in those situations, the former caused great joy, the latter caused a spectacular amount of pain and sadness. I was also several times at a point in my career where I was my job and my job was me. It's only more recently that I've learned that the separation can make the difference, right? Therefore, with my whole identity being tied up in my job, who I was related to what work I did. When the leader was not nurturing or supportive, it just didn't hurt at a career level, it hurt me personally. So therefore, I think as leaders, as people who manage teams and people, we must be intensely aware of the people around us. So, I started off by saying, the taboo question that you asked, and I said I was very lucky. Of course, there still today exists a lot of discrimination against women, right, in the workforce, and especially at senior levels. And when I say discrimination, I mean snide remarks. I mean some level of sarcasm. There's also this boys club thing that happens. I've had the pleasure of working in largely male-dominated organizations where there's this subtle boys club kind of thing that goes around the room. And as someone who's face is not always in my phone, I look around and I'm seeing it happen and I'm seeing why. And I'm saying, what is this? But is that something that we must deal with? Yes, we must. There's no option. Men came into the workforce and established themselves much earlier than women did. Women, in many ways, are still new entrants in the workforce. Therefore, the workforce is not still settled with the idea that women will be present and they will, be a certain way or behave a certain way. Do they bring value to the workforce? They certainly do. Different perspective, different thought process, etc. But today, that coming together of the workforce is still in the process, which is why I believe that both men and women must be given an equal chance to thrive in a workplace situation. We often tell men what not to do, therefore leaving them with a whole wide spectrum of things that they could or could not do. But we specifically give women instructions about what they must do, right? For example, you'll tell a boy, don't whistle at a girl, for lack of a better example, right? So don't whistle at a girl, then I can do many other things. But you're telling a girl, you dress like this. You wear a salwar kameez with a dupatta on top of your head. So as a woman, I'm getting a clear instruction, but as a man, I'm getting this vague, hazy, don't do kind of thing. So therefore, that same person who goes into a workforce may not be equipped to manage, behave, act the way he potentially could if he was given a clear instruction. And I think I digressed again. I took it away from where you started and I landed up somewhere else. So I think maybe time to bring it back.
We'll bring that back. So no problem with that. I think that these are all important elements, important pieces of the conversation. And as we are kind of exploring this particular piece, what would be your piece of advice or mantra that has made you successful, that has made you to kind of have a thriving career to all the aspiring women professionals, people who are coming into the profession or people who are already there in the profession? What can they hear from you as they grow their careers?
Shrikant, I'd say don't let gender be your guiding force. As you, in your career, bring to your career, your job, the best that you can do, the best that you are in terms of what you have to offer the organization or the job. And that really is what it ought to be, right? It ought not to be that, I'm a woman, therefore I deserve this promotion. No, you don't. I'm a woman, therefore, I should be allowed to go home at 3 in the afternoon just because I'm a woman. Because both men and women have equally pressing requirements to be home, to, manage their lives outside of work. But because I'm a woman, I must be treated with kid gloves, but I want the same level of salary and I want everything else going on. Let's be clear that let's not bring gender into the workforce and make it's good for me when I want to, and it's not good when I don't want.
We also speak about the importance of mentors or role models. And in a lot many ways, when I have my conversations with my colleagues, I kind of turn this around saying that how would for a change you be that mentor, you be that role model rather than looking for somebody else. What's your take on this? How critical it is, and how can one be a better role model, better mentor than looking for a mentor or a role model? Both of it is important, but I just want to flip it around and say that be the role model that you're looking for, be the mentor that you're looking for.
You're right. You're absolutely right that, we can each in ourselves be that role model or mentor that we seek. However, I think in our early lives, it's hard to know what we want because, our perspectives are limited to what we've been through in school or college or, in those 20, 25 years of our lives. Before we actually get into being role models or being mentors, we must have an understanding of what there is out there. Like I spoke about earlier, there are different leadership styles, there are different types of people. What is it that works for me and what is it that doesn't work? Sometimes even the best leader may not work for me. It's much like working with a counselor. And I tell my clients, we might have 1 or 2 conversations and it may not work for you. My energy and yours may not match. My response to your requirement may not match. Therefore, have an introductory session, have a conversation. And if it doesn't work for you, tell me, I would like to know, and then I can refer you to somebody else, right? Much like that in the corporate world, we must go through multiple phases, people, organizations maybe, to see what else there is out there and therefore start to build ourselves as that role. I was lucky that in the early part of my career, I got to see both what I really don't want and both what I would really like to be at the extreme ends of the spectrum. And that was really fantastic for me. Those learnings I hold with me still today. And one of those people who was my mentor in the early days of my career, till today, I have an extremely good relationship with her. And she still guides me in many of the things that, I do today. I take her input, her insight, her view on many of the things that I do. And I have to say I was lucky.
Were you lucky or you created that luck of having that mentor with you?
No, I was lucky. Really, the universe conspired to make that happen. It was really in the early days of my career and I knew nothing about communications. And I'll tell you this little story. There was the opportunity to apply for, to be the head of that particular office. And I was 6 months into my PR career. I was working with a PR agency at that point. And so what the organization did was they said anyone in the office, in the organization can apply for this role of head of the office. And I was like, I'm 6 months into this job. I know nothing about running an office. I'm not even going to apply. So I didn't. And 2 days before the applications were closing, that before the deadline, the CEO, she calls me and says, I haven't received your application. And I said, I didn't apply. I don't believe I'm qualified for the job. She said, you know what? Just apply. Just apply. You may not get the job, but I want to see what you have to say. And she can't believe it or not, I got that job. Because of her, it changed the trajectory of my career. And also, the thing I said earlier about showing up, just show up. Whether you win or lose or get anything out of it is not the point. Point is that you showed up. I got that job and literally no looking back from there. And I always, even when I speak to her today, I said, it is because of you, right? And it's almost like I'm blaming her that my career went so well. It is because of you that this panned out, right? And, I think about it and I'm saying, what a high quality, generous woman she is to say, give it a shot. What do you have to lose? A lot of leaders would have said, you have 6 months in the business. Don't bother with it. You know nothing about it. But she said, do it. And she placed in me that faith that I will help you do it. She said to me, here, you've got the job. Now I'll help you. And she did help me. She didn't just pay lip service to that whole setup. So, I often lay that as a lens.
Absolutely. You called it out what I wanted to say. That's exactly the role of that mentor, is to be that invisible hand, to provide that nudge so that the individual can skyrocket to the next stratosphere.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, the first of the power of 3 round, you're playing your very multiple hats. So we have kind of spoken about it multiple times during our conversation. What are the 3 time management routines that you follow that has allowed you to manage these multiple roles that you have been playing?
I'm a great fan of to-do lists. I love to-do lists. I love the crossing out of things as you finish them and physically handwritten to-do lists. So I think that goes a long way for me. So I have a list and I work according to it. The other is Google Maps. If you want to get somewhere on time, Google Maps will tell you what time you'll get there. So when people say, I showed up 20 minutes late, I didn't realize. Well, here's technology, please use it. So that's the other thing that I use very effectively. And what I find most importantly, and I've learned this more recently again, age, I think, is quite beneficial, to get enough sleep. Therefore I'm all aware and awake and I'm able to focus on the things that I need.
Hey, that's a good start. So what would be your 3 pieces of advice to your older self?
To my older self, I think humor is an extremely important thing in life. And in my life, I hope I never lose the capacity to smile and laugh and be joyous about things in life. I've also learned that, in an argument situation or in a response to rudeness, take one deep breath, or step away from it overnight before you respond. There's no reason to respond immediately or in anger because that just changes the whole situation. Not that, I'm able to do it all the time, but that's something I aspire for. And also, I find there's no need to be there for everyone all the time. Sometimes I overdo the showing up and being present thing. also sometimes at the cost of my own emotional needs. And I feel that, sometimes it's okay to say, no, I can't, I won't.
Good. 3 tools to be an effective communicator.
I'm going to say listen is number one. Without listening, there's no communication going, right? The other is to ask questions. If you don't understand, say it and re-ask. It's okay to ask questions, right? And a third thing would be to be aware of your own body language, right? When you're saying something, be aware of the body language that's supporting it or not. It's an important aspect of getting your message across and getting people to understand what you're saying.
So stretching that thought a little more, if I were to ask what are the 3 micro experiments people can do to enhance their own communication styles or communication skills, what would those 3 micro experiments be?
I would give only one micro experiment, Shrikant, and that would be to listen. We find it very, very hard to listen to people. Because by the time people have finished their sentence, the thought is formed in our minds and we've already started saying it before that sentence is over. Therefore, sometimes missing the point or say, oh, I didn't understand it the way you said it. Then that whole thing starts over again. And I would say just, learn to listen, and that would go a long way.
You being such a wonderful student of life, what would be your 3 book recommendations or knowledge resources for one to invest in?
I read a lot. I love reading. I enjoy reading. I also listen to audiobooks, so it's not my favorite form of reading. But I read a lot of mainly fiction. I'm not a great fan of self-help and, to-do books kind of thing. I love historical fiction. So I read a lot of Connie Golden. He's written many, many series of people in history. So I listened to that. Yeah, I recently read Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's a Nigerian author and has a deeply evocative style. The way she writes, you can almost see, you can visualize what's going on ground there in Nigeria. And I enjoyed her books. The other one who I've read more recently is an Tamil author called Perumal Murugan. One of his books was actually created into that movie where, I forget the name, but Aishwarya Rai was in that movie. Beautifully written books. I'm not a great fan, again, of translated books, but I think this translation is very nice and, again, very well done. So those are the 3 authors that, currently are kind of come to me.
Interesting bunch of recommendations there. Definitely will look out for them. So last of the Power of 3 round, Archana, what are the 3 things on your bucket list?
Oh gosh, my bucket list is like a never-ending list of bucket. But yeah, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that I love cars, I love vehicles, I love aircraft, I love all those transportation things. So one of the things that I've wanted from when I was a very little girl was to own a Lexus SUV, a golden colored Lexus SUV. So that's on my list for sure. Hopefully, eventually I'll get one of those. I wanted to go skydiving in Dubai. That's on my list. I also want to travel more. And some of the things that I specifically want to go and see are the Northern Lights, for example. I want to go to Antarctica. I want to see the pyramids. So a lot of my bucket list, it's not, deep and I must be a better person type thing. It's more on the surface that says I want to travel and go and see the world. I want
experience.
To get around a lot more. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I did mention that it was the last of my Power of 3 round. Now I'm tempted to ask you one last question. Since you are in the PR industry for such a long period of time, you have been interacting with the who is who of the industry. If you were to be given a chance to interview 3 personalities, who would those 3 personalities be and why?
Very interesting. Very interesting question. Technically, my job is not one of interviewing. I'm more a facilitator of the interview than the interviewer in itself. The creator of messages, etc.
Okay, let's put it this way. If you are to facilitate and I am going to interview who are those 3 individuals, you will facilitate.
Oh, nice. Good job, Shrikant. Good job. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say one of the people I would like to interview is Barkhada. Yeah. I find that her interviews are so strong and so, there's so much opinion and that comes out as an outcome of, her interviews that I'd love to interview the person behind that interview. The person behind who creates that interview. Where does that come from, really? I'm very interested in where people come from about these things, right? I think another person who I'd like to interview would be Rahul Gandhi. And I'll tell you why. Because I think the way the media showcases his interviews, his interaction. At some level, I think there's a lot more to him than just that political piece, which may or may not be his core competence, right? That's a separate conversation. But to see, again, the person behind that whole legacy, how, it's a hard act to follow, right? How that would be an interesting one. And who else? The idea really would be to interview somebody who's showcased as this larger than life presence, leader. What is that? What is the essence of that person? And really, Shrikant, the outcome of the interview is to say, we're all people at the end of the day. We're all human. We have real things going on in our lives more than what we showcase on a social media platform, on a platform where we create the outcomes, right? Here, what is the outcome that's actually happening when all this is going on around? And that really is the thought process, if there were ever to be such an interview.
Great. Thank you for playing sport on this segment, Archana. This show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. Before you and I sign off, what's your Inspire Someone Today message for all of our listeners out there?
I'm going to re-say what I said earlier. When in doubt, just show up.
When in doubt, show up. On that note, my dear listeners, signing off from this episode of Inspire Someone Today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inspire Someone Today. This is Shrikant, your host, signing off. Until next time, continue to carry the ripples of inspiration. Stay inspired, keep spreading the light.